Hi Taurus, welcome to your Venus retrograde reading. It's your March reading, but it's all about Venus retrograde. So let's shuffle these cards and we'll talk about the transits and what comes up. But I also want to talk to you about something else. I think it applies this month, but more so this year. Have you been through the experience where someone really pursues you, wants to be around you, pursues you, wants to be around you, really like puts in a lot of effort, and then once they experience you, and it's quite an experience, right? Then they're like kind of gone. And maybe you think to yourself, I guess they must not have liked me or how it was or how I was. I wonder how often we've stopped to consider that maybe they never really saw you, they never were able to humanize you, and instead they saw you as an experience, something out of this world, something they could never even imagine of having on a daily basis, something spectacular that they could definitely not afford or sustain. The same people who would love to spend the day on a yacht are probably the same people who will never make enough money to afford to own and staff a yacht. But they would have no problem having a lot of fun on that yacht for a day. So, learning to distinguish between the people who... It's so funny. The movie tarot is sitting here right next to me, and the card that got knocked out of place and here when the other Hierophant card is also the Hierophant. So like a very Taurus right now. So it's a year to really consider who is there because they're intrigued and they're looking for their kicks, and who's there for something more. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to disqualify anybody. You know, perhaps you are also looking for your kicks. No problem. But if you are looking for something more, or if you've been taking this out on yourself, like people being super interested and then seemingly pulling away and in a manner that's hurtful, confusing, and so directly opposite to how they had been. If you've been struggling with this and taking it out on yourself because it seems to be this pattern of feedback that you're getting, that every one of these encounters is actually a referendum on who you are as a person. It's commentary on how much they liked or disliked you. Not at all. Not at all. Everyone who gets on that multi-million-dollar yacht for a day remembers it for the rest of their life. They're not on that yacht the next day, not because they don't want to be, but because the world they live in, they will never be able to afford emotionally, financially, physically. They'll never be able to afford sustaining that level of luxury. You may be the closest they'll ever get to true luxury. And where not having you makes them chase that, and experiencing you becomes a core memory, later having to grapple with the fact that that can't be theirs, and having to grapple with why that's not possible. In that third act, you become the villain, having done nothing. This can also happen in friendships. So, starting off strong. Okay, let's keep going here. Mars is direct as of yesterday, and today, February 25th, 2025, is the 10-year anniversary of the channel. Yay! Being a Vedic Taurus, somehow doing the Taurus reading today feels right. Next card out is one of my faves. It's the Six of Cups. Mars is direct and you feel a sort of instant improvement in relationships, but it just continues. It just keeps going from here. Things get easier to talk about. Friends are easier to catch up with. It's easier to express yourself. Venus is in Aries, and soon on the 3rd of March, Mercury will join Aries, and there will be this this sort of dance where Venus goes retrograde on the 2nd as Mercury is moving on the 3rd into Aries. So there's this switch happening, and Taurus rising, that's happening in your 12th house. And there will be a moment of communication between your ruling planet, Venus, as it goes retrograde, and Mercury as it's moving forward. There will be an aspect of your life that now Venus and Mercury will both go back and forth over for a while. Fortunately, unfortunately, it's a bit dramatic and it's a bit messy, but not painful, so that's good. This period is one where if you have sought, if you've deeply sought, like painfully sought clarification on a romantic matter and you just felt like there was none, the frustration of it, of just not having the answers, things that were left unresolved, situations that deserved more, situations where if someone could have just said, this is an experience that blew my mind, but I can't have it again. Anything, any clarification would have brought such healing to your wounds, but there was none. Those situations, as Mercury and Venus do this thing, because then later in March, Mercury will go retrograde. So there's a lot of this going on, okay? And it's in an old flame, bottom of the deck here, this 5 of Cups. It's in an old flame area. It's people coming back to you when you're the one who needs clarity with them. And then it's easy to realize from there, oh, perhaps this person has been as stuck as me, but they were stuck, in fact, for a completely different reason. Venus retrograde makes it possible for those who have kept away from you out of their pride and their inability to accept inadequacy, own up, fess up, whatever it is, has to do with accountability. Those people who, because of their own faults and their own vanities, have kept themselves away from you, it feels like they are dragged back to you. And you may, in turn, feel very much like your natal sun's opposition there, or if you're a Taurus rising, that 7th house energy of, wanting to sting and be a Scorpio and hurt people back. And, you can treat this like a Venus flytrap moment and just let people come back and then devour them. Of course you can do that. And perhaps the reason it comes up is because there is a segment of the population that deserves that. Perhaps there are a few people who really do deserve that. But I suppose then I would say take it on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes you fight with people who you're actually in love with. Whatever you do, however you want to clarify, assess, move forward, don't let it be on these terms. If you have a previous relationship with someone where it was left unresolved, but your dynamic was a dynamic of build up good feeling, fight, get upset with each other, tear each other down, like a toxic circle, don't get back into that. That you should not let back into your life, but it is something that you should assess and come to terms with. And, you know, Venus and Mercury will help you clarify how you can tell moving forward who was there for the goods, for the experience, and who was there for you. Now, maybe I'm going a little easy on these people that want the experience from you, but I think it's because, to your credit, the experience is so fantastic that I think people don't know how to tell the difference between you and it. It's so overwhelmingly beautiful and so satisfying on every sensual level that they conflate that wondrous experience with who you are. So it puts you in the frame of a giver simply by being of such good taste and creating such a beautiful environment, simply by being who you are. It dehumanizes you, because instead of seeing the effort and the care, the work, the hard work that goes into that experience, it is the experience itself, and you as a human get lost in there. You don't have an identity. You don't need to be considered. You don't need to be considered. I think is where we land. You don't need to be considered, because what you're doing is so overwhelmingly considerate, appealing, pleasing to the eye, to the smell, to sensual satisfaction. I think we take for granted when we're around that you must be okay. You must be fulfilled. You're doing such a good job considering me and anticipating my needs. I'm just going to assume you're doing that for yourself. Rarely do we stop and think that if a Taurus is offering us such a beautiful thing, that we should in fact be putting in the same amount of work, maybe even learning from the Taurus how to speak this love language. No, instead we consume. And I suppose for a long time you can be really happy with just giving, because you have this inexhaustible store of energy and information and love. But I don't think you reach the point of frustration because you don't have more to give. I don't think you run empty. I think it's at some point your principles start to pipe up and you're just genuinely offended. Like, I could be putting in this work anywhere. I could be planting these seeds anywhere. It's my show. It's not your show. You don't get to just take. I could take this show on the fucking road if I wanted to. And the lunar eclipse with that full moon in Virgo, that lunar eclipse, I think it's going to be a bit of a rude awakening for some people around you. Friends, family, all of it. Then you have that Venus retrograde most of March. I think you're going to give people enough room to re-examine how they've been behaving. Of course, according to the astrology, you could help them re-examine. You could be the catalyst behind arguments, fights, I'm gonna make you tell me you're a fake friend, or you could just give space, do your thing, plant your seeds the way you want to, do your work, and let people expose themselves. Let people come to their own conclusions about how they should behave, how they're not behaving, how they may not even be considering you as a person. Venus retrograde can be a little bit harsh that way because it makes you do things slowly, but when you're on your get back and it's slow, it really sticks. It really hurts people. When people realize that a Taurus has stepped back and does not want to engage their horns anymore, it's like you get like a cold feeling in your chest, like, because that person is truly done with you. They don't care anymore. They don't even care enough to fight. It's a really powerful tactic to get people to look at themselves without doing any work, minimal work here. And most of that work is just you allowing people to see themselves as they are. When you remove all the bells, the whistles, the flowers, the pretty, the living plants, the animals, when you, Taurus, life, when you take the life out of the room with you and you leave and you take your beautiful work elsewhere of living and being and just creating all this beauty and joy and life and food and happiness, and when you take that with you and go somewhere else, when you take this fucking show on the road, I think a lot of people get exactly what they deserve, which is themselves. Your experience, your show is so beautiful and so compelling that you've got people living inside of it instead of living their own lives. They don't have to go live their own lives because your life is so exciting. They just have to somehow keep themselves a part of it. I have to control you because I need you so much. I have to love you more. You have to love me more than you love anybody else because I need you so much. And do you like that? And do you love that? Yes. But that level of need has to be matched with the same level, if not higher, of devotion. If you need me so much, I expect abject loyalty and respect. No? Or I will take this fucking show on the road. It's really good for you. You get to have your own experience without having to make concessions for others. I love the way Tauruses spend time alone. It's always so dreamy, you know? Sure, there's time to be quiet in the middle of the chaos. There's time to be quiet because people need to realize how much they take for granted. Sure, there's a need to be quiet when you feel like things are being pulled away from you. We'll talk about that more with work and money in the extended. But there's also the kind of quiet where you play the piano in the morning because you want to, and you take a salt bath in the evening because it feels so good, and you have 2 or 3 uninterrupted days of beautiful sunsets and just sitting by the fire and eating nice food and reading your book or watching your series. The experience you provide for others is filled with fanfare, but the experience that you provide for yourself is really nourishing and perhaps you can start to work yourself into a space where you can create that sense of nourishment with others as well, instead of the fanfare. Because I think the fanfare to a certain extent is seduction, but it's also maybe like a little, people pleasing, maybe a little out of insecurity. There might be like a slight manic quality to it, but people love it, so it doesn't matter. But that nourishment, that quiet, slow healing that you do for yourself, if that was on the menu, if you could offer that as part of the experience package, or even perhaps replace the original experience with it, although there would be many complaints, I think you would find that you can alter the amount of uncomfortable conversations you have to have with people. Because we have to stop and think, why would somebody categorize us as an experience instead of a person? What are we also putting forward that can objectify us so deeply? But you already know the answer, because you know that Taurus has a tendency to objectify. And to a Taurus, one of the greatest compliments is to be in some romantic way objectified. So there's that. There's the answer to that. So perhaps a more nourishing connection, and less of a connection where you want someone to just be completely awed and a sort of like a Venusian tidal wave of just fall in love with me, be enamored with me. If in fact that were replaced by something similar to what you do for yourself. Because you're always going to be doing and giving and producing the show, so it's really, we can't stop you from doing that. So it's really just about thinking about how to best use that power. And when I say that, I don't mean you have to give nourishing ocean soak baths to your partner or your friends. What I mean is, when I say a more nourishing experience, what I mean is something that is more of a two-way street. Less of you pulling out all the stops and doing everything and expending all your energy because you can, and more of a give and take. More honest somehow. Talking to know instead of to wow. What I'm saying, I suppose, in a roundabout way, is that oftentimes the reason people objectify us is because we have a hand in it. And it's also important to explore that and just be upfront with yourself about it, If for no other reason than that it can change what you call into your life next. Because until we change how we feed into ourselves, what codes we're constantly reinforcing, our external will just be the same experience over and over again. It will not change, no matter what we think we know. So, yeah. It's a good time for a reset to attract some real joy by your birthday. Some fun, some joy, some excitement. It's a perfect time, in fact. Also, you must be exhausted. instead of taking the show on the road, maybe just like take a break, put the circus wagon away for a few months. Maybe? I think so. I think it's a great idea, actually. And having said all that, I will also say that it is probably one of the most glorious things in the world to experience. To be a part of the experience of a Taurus who loves you. So anyone who has had that experience with you and then couldn't take it or didn't show back up, trust me when I tell you it was definitely not you. Okay? There's a bunch of links below for the extended. We're going to talk work, money, luck, mental health, physical health. And there is a link for instant readings where I send you back the reading in 60 minutes or less. Okay? Okay. I love you.